Right, so the fallout from Rachel Reeves' budget became so readily apparent, panic in the financial market so immediate, that she ended up having to go on telly later the same night to try and calm the situation down a little bit. A move that is a telltale sign of what is economically a bad budget. Very embarrassing for the Chancellor in question. And goodness knows the people behind such stock exchanges and business dealings know exactly what will kill their fortunes and that of the nation they may be invested in. But given the none too distant memory of the Liz Truss mini-budget, such sphincter clenching by the money men has drawn the inevitable conclusions, and the far-right press, we can hardly just call them right-wing when that is exactly what Labour is now, but those far more aligned with the equally economically inept Tories and even worse Reform UK Ltd, comparisons to Liz Truss are actually a great attack line. Actually, given the market reaction immediately after the budget, it's not a bad comparison at this point in time to make, though still an unfair one, given we're only days into the aftermath and things may be levelling out. Not that this is particularly good either, though. No, the Reeves budget is less Liz Truss, more George Osborne omni-shambles, and that shouldn't come as a surprise when she has sought his advice on previous occasions, and what this budget truly amounts to is Austerity 2.0. It failed before. It will fail again. And it is the very working people Labour is meant to represent that will be harmed the most by it. Because Labour is truly dead. This budget nailed that coffin shut. We simply have another Tory party now. Right, so Rachel Reeves' budget has sent the markets into a panic. But quite honestly, there's a big element of them frankly not caring right now either, as they are not up for election for sadly quite some time to come. The most unpopular Prime Minister at this point in his tenure in history, as Keir Starmer is. And a budget just delivered that is going to hurt ordinary working class people the country over yet again, when we've already been suffering from the pain and misery of 14 years of Tory rule, or misrule, all kick-started, of course, by George Osborne's austerity programme, now being repeated again by Rachel Reeves. A programme to cut the nation's spending to promote growth, pay the national debt down and develop a surplus. Shrink the state, less spending, create a surplus of cash which the country never needs to do. It is not a household budget after all. It is actually quite harmful. And it has been disastrous for public services and incomes ever since. Never rolled back on. And now here's Rachel Reeves now embarking on a second helping of it. A second roll of the dice of this nonsense. As if repeating the mistake will make any difference. Where Liz Truss's mini-budget was an unfunded disaster, Reeves is terrifying the markets instead by repeating George Osborne's penny pinching. But thought she was so clever to make it look like she was protecting working people by going after their bosses instead. And of course this is the main factor in this budget, isn't it? The national insurance assault on employers, who will pass on their pain to their employees, of course, because of course they will. So it is still very much an assault on working people, which Labour also seem unable to be able to define. But it's a very simple concept to come to a realisation on. If the business costs go up, therefore, for the business to remain solvent, to remain a going concern, said business must make cutbacks itself, or it must raise prices, if that's an option for them. The average national insurance contribution per employee just shot up by £648 annually. That's a big chunk of change. And it is not necessarily true to say the bigger the company, the more they are affected, because certain industries will be clobbered harder, and actually these are industries that have already been heavily damaged under the Tories, and especially due to Brexit at that, which continues to be an elephant in the room regarding damage to the economy that no government seems set on addressing. The two sectors I'm thinking of are hospitality and the care sector, and these come to mind particularly for me because my son is a chef and his partner is a care assistant. Both industries already suffer from low pay, but equally they require a large number of employees, so they get clobbered disproportionately harder with increasing national insurance rates. All of these national insurance rises are supposed to bring in some £25.7 billion by the end of this Parliament, we were told in that budget, but already that has been revised down massively, as Rachel Reeves has had to scramble around to put in some mitigating measures and has had to factor in the damage to profits too, the very growth that Labour keep chirping about that they want, that this move has actually made. The figure that is now being raised has been revised down to £16.1 billion. That's quite the hefty drop, isn't it? And the reason for that has been that wage rises going forwards will largely be axed or will be far less than anticipated. Other employees may see their hours cut or even their jobs entirely. The government is also facing a drop here due to now putting in mitigating measures for public service providers. The NHS, likely the largest example of this, employing 1.6 million people as they do. A £648 average national insurance bill hike for each one of those, that's over £1 billion on its own. All of this is less money in ordinary working people's pockets. More people claiming low income or out of work benefits as a result of that will come, all as Labour seek to clobber people who are on claiming out of work benefits, etc., on that front as well, in their savage determination to reduce the welfare bill. Instead, it's going to go up. This won't be people getting something for nothing, as too often gets portrayed in our media. These will be victims of idiotic government policy directly, and that has to be pointed out. If Reeves had instead had the guts to do what many people wanted and uprate capital gains tax thresholds in line with income tax thresholds, that's £15 billion on its own. That's money made from means other than employment, other than waged work. That would not have hit ordinary working class people in the manner her assault on national insurance will now do. And given how that figure has now been revised down to 16.1 billion versus 15 billion, you can see just how absolutely avoidable all of this is. A woman on Question Time last night who employs 60 people called the government out very well on this, because what Reeves's budget has done is pass the buck on to employers to be the bad guys now. She told Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones on the show that having promised not to put national insurance up on them, instead they have put it on their boss, which, not knowing her business, or I can't judge, but certainly this will be reflective of many businesses, particularly small and medium businesses. But her point was, it now puts her in the position of having to make the tough decisions the government refused to. The government cowardice to not go after the rich, instead taking the easy way out of punching down, but not even having the courage to do that openly, forcing the employers to do it through job losses, cut hours and reduced wages going forwards across this parliament. As this woman told Darren Jones, this budget has made her and employers like her the villains of the piece now. If perhaps you're not feeling particularly sympathetic towards this story for whatever reason from the employer perspective, here's another example. Last night I chaired a finance and general purposes meeting at Helston Town Council. I'm a town councillor, and as some regular viewers will be aware, and we're affected as employers of staff too, because town councils have staff, from our office staff to our grounds maintenance crew. That directly impacts our budget for stuff we want to do in service to the town now, and that's a story that will be reflected in councils the country over as well. As for the markets having the jitters over another George Osborne signature budget, because frankly you can see his fingerprints all over this, such as his clear impression upon Rachel Reeves, government debt borrowing has shot up as well, which is where those Liz Truss comparisons have suddenly come from, a surefire sign of a bad budget as that is. But Reeves continues to defend it. She claims she said there would be consequences when confronted with the truth about the impact on ordinary people's wages, but that is all after people voted Labour in a landslide on a manifesto pledge that there would be no rises in income tax, national insurance or VAT. That manifesto pledge was broken when all of a sudden, post-election, Labour added on working people to that statement, implying employers don't work themselves. I know exactly what doesn't work here in this scenario, and that is this Labour government for the people of this country. The ultimate lie to that statement of all being the fact that taxes on ordinary working people are going to go up as these costs inevitably get passed on. You are now more expensive to employ, no matter who you are, no matter who you work for. Bigger assault on working people, people who earn a wage, as Keir Starmer said they were, there never has been. And the rich are laughing all the way to the bank as they still pay less tax proportionally than we do. There was no wealth tax. Their hoarded wealth, the majority of the nation's wealth as that is, remains stagnant wherever they keep it, not working and therefore not driving the economy, not healthy for the economy, which is a better way of measuring the economy in and of itself. It should not be in terms of growth, but in terms of health, because growth is always going to be finite. But when ordinary people spending what they've got is what drives the economy most, buying goods, paying tax on that, helping businesses to grow, creating jobs, all Rachel Reeves has done is throw a stacking great spanner into that system in a manner that will kill growth off stone dead, just as George Osborne did before, and where she defends the consequences as she sees them of her actions, people's incomes taking a bit of a belt. Actually, the ramifications could well be far worse than that. The minimum wage increase will be something Reeves's defenders will point to, but taken against the national insurance hikes, that doesn't touch the size, and it is still below the level of a national living wage. A penny off a pint of beer is what Labour spent cash on social media advertising over as a good news story, but if that's honestly the best they can advertise from this budget, it really should be causing alarm bells for everybody. This budget served the rich, it threw ordinary people under the bus, it threw people running small to medium-sized businesses under a bus that will also now cost more to get on, again impacting the wages of the lowest paid who tend to use buses more, of course. In that regard, I suppose Rachel Reeves' budget is just like a Liz Truss one, but also a George Osborne one, because it still serves the same people at the expense of all of us. And Labour should be damned for it, as I'm sure it will be, when reality bites for more and more people, and they wake up to it a little bit more. Rachel Reeves essentially declared class war on the British public with this budget, and I went into much more of the other parts of the budget in my own coverage of it in the immediate hours following that budget. So if you care for my reaction on that, please do check out that video here as my recommendation as your suggested next watch. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.